Welcome into the Big Little Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. That is Andrew Greig, and we have a very, 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 very special guest to talk the NFL draft. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. We met at the Senior Bowl. We'll talk a little bit about that, too, before we get into everything, but go on ahead.
I'm Frank Ramirez, more known as a Splash Center on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. You can go follow me there, but yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, we met at the Senior Bowl. We were both covering it in Mobile, Alabama. That was kind of I don't know where you were staying. Actually, I don't think we talked about this, but I was staying in a place that was like a motel, bed bugs and everything. It was not the greatest thing ever, but they did have continental breakfast. So
I did not have continental breakfast. I was in an Airbnb, so it was right next to the school.
Did you check the cameras around the in the Airbnb?
I probably should have, but no, I didn't.
Yeah, no, I saw some about that. All right, well, we're going to get into the NFL draft. Obviously, we kind of were introduced to some of these players in the Senior Bowl. You knew more about it than I did going into it, but we're going to start with potentially maybe one of the biggest storylines of the draft, and that is with Travis Hunter and whether or not he will be able to play both ways in the NFL. A lot of people have differing opinions on it, but he considers himself more of a wide receiver than a cornerback, and he is definitely going to play both ways no matter what team drafts him, or he said he's going to retire. What are your thoughts on whether or not he can do that and sustain that in the
NFL? I think Travis Hunter can easily be a two-way player in the NFL. Not only is he my number one ranked wide receiver, but he's also my number one ranked cornerback, which haven't come out on my videos. But yeah, I think this guy is a generational talent, and I think he's the perfect athlete to fit that mold, and he could do it.
Is there any team that you would like to see him go to in that sense that could like utilize his skills more so?
Oh, the Giants. I think the Giants is a perfect fit. Now with them getting Russell Wilson and also having Jameis as their backup. You got Malik Neighbors, so you don't need him to be a solidified number one wide receiver. He could be that extra guy that, gives you an extra weapon. And in terms of their secondary, they brought in good guys. I actually do like their secondary this year. And I think he fits perfectly. So he's just going to make that secondary even better.
Yeah, you talk about playing both sides of the ball. Obviously, that's something that Travis Hunter really wants to do. But where do you see him going specifically? Obviously, the Cleveland Browns have expressed interest in him. The New York Giants, obviously, as well. Is there a specific landing spot that you see for Travis Hunter?
Oh yeah, the Giants. I think it's a perfect spot for him. It's the best spot, I think.
What do you think about the Giants not taking a quarterback in this draft? Obviously, that means that they would be passing up on Shedeur Sanders. Now he's getting mocked in a ton of different places, especially in the top 10. But they would be passing up another franchise quarterback potentially to take Travis Hunter. He's a generational player, but is that something that you think that franchise is doing that is smart?
I actually do think it's smart because if you look at next year's draft, tons of prospects, Drew Aller being one of them, Lenoris Sellers potentially, Arch Manning. I think that draft class is way more loaded in terms of quarterback talent. So you take a guy like Travis Hunter, a guy you can already solidify your team as, and then next year, you go into next year with needing a quarterback potentially, you can take one of those guys, and that fits perfectly.
Okay, so I mentioned Shedeur Sanders and where he could potentially go in this NFL draft. My guess would be the Saints. In all honesty, I think they maybe make a move to try to go up and get him, or maybe he does just fall to their pick. But I know that you disagree. I know you don't have him going to the Saints. Where do you have Shedeur Sanders going?
I think the Steelers is a good option for Shedeur Sanders. Or actually, even though I did say that Travis Hunter is a great fit for the Giants, I don't know if the Giants are actually going to pick Travis Hunter. And I think they might actually still even take Shedeur with Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson they brought in. I think it's
How far behind do you have him from Cam Ward? Because obviously Cam Ward's like the bona fide number one, but how far do you think the gap is?
I don't think it's as big as a gap as a lot of people take it. Shedeur Sanders is, I believe, the most pro-ready NFL quarterback. I know it's a hot take nowadays. People say that Shedeur isn't a top talent, but I do like his talent in terms of his arm, great accuracy, pinpoint accuracy. He's solid in the pocket with his footwork. Sometimes gets shaky with pressure, but I do like Shedeur Sanders. And I don't think, Go ahead.
Talk about Shedeur to the Steelers. Obviously, the Steelers are drafting a little bit farther back in the draft. What would they have to do to get him? Do you think that they could stay where they're at, or would they have to trade up?
I think that's a great question because I think the Cowboys might actually be a team that trade back with the Steelers if Shedeur Sanders is available at 12.
Okay. I'm on the train of maybe like more on the Saints train, especially because of the fact that like Derek Carr is not like all there. Where do you see the Saints, like just in general, maybe where do you see them going with that pick, especially because of the fact that they kind of alluded to the fact that they might not be taking quarterback with their pick and they might settle on a different position just in general.
Yeah, and it's hard to think about because I'm a Spencer Rattler guy, so I I like Spencer Rattler. I think they should stick with him, and I think that's what they actually might end up doing, just to give him one more year. It was his first year last year, tons of injuries. So, yeah,
Spencer Rattler as like a franchise guy, or Spencer Rattler as
maybe like a bridge QB.
Yeah, like a bridge quarterback. See what you got in him. I do think he has the talent to potentially be, a franchise guy, but right now I don't think he is. But he does have the talent.
Are you a South Carolina Gamecocks fan by chance?
No, I'm not. I'm not.
I think, unfortunately, a lot of Gamecocks fans would tell you otherwise.
Oh, yeah.
He was just too up and down and too inconsistent those last couple of years, even with Shane Beamer, though.
Yeah.
Pat, you have anything else on Shedeur? I feel like we've gotten a pretty good gauge of like where we expect Shedeur to, like, the Steelers sounds like a good landing spot. I mean, the Saints like obviously desperately need a quarterback. I don't think you can go back to Derek Carr, especially after a season-ending injury. So I mean, either of those spots would be good. Is there, like, just before we move off of Shedeur, is there any other place you could see him? Obviously, there's the Giants are rumored to like stick with either one of the two defensive players. The Saints say they're not drafting a quarterback that high, and like the Steelers are so far back in the draft. Is there anywhere else you could possibly see him going?
Honestly, if knowing Jerry Jones, if he gets there, I wouldn't doubt him to take him, especially with the Sanders last name. I've tweeted about this too, like a while ago. I don't doubt Jerry Jones to do it.
That would be, if that happens, what would you say is more shocking? Michael Penix last year to the Falcons, or
it would be
the Cowboys?
It would be Shedeur Sanders to the Cowboys, especially with Dak Prescott.
That would make some noise, I feel like.
That definitely
Jerry
would.
Jones loves noise.
I counted down the top paid NFL players, and obviously it's just quarterbacks. And Dak Prescott was on that list. And when you take a look at that list, there was only about like 5 guys that were really worth the money. So maybe if they do feel like Shedeur Sanders has that potential to truly be their franchise guy, and they end up picking him in the first round, I'd imagine they would have to move off of Dak Prescott eventually, like within a year.
Well, it's hard for that because he has a no trade clause, so that's why I think
it's extraordinarily tough for them. Yeah,
yeah, it's hard to say, but I know Jerry Jones and he loves noise, and that pick will do it.
Yeah, moving on from Shedeur Sanders, though, and possibly the Jerry Jones bonanza that would be. Obviously, there's a lot of guys in this draft and a lot of big names that you hear, like Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. But who's somebody that you see as an underrated player that can maybe make his way up some draft boards that a lot of people aren't talking about?
And I actually recently talked about this, but Trayshawn Holden, the wide receiver out of Oregon, is a guy I've really fallen in love with in terms of he's supposed to be a UDFA, and I just don't see it at a guy that's almost 6'3", 220 with 4.5 speed. He's got a solid route tree and great hands, big playability. He's one of the guys that I've fallen in love with. So definitely one of my guys. That's a guy that I really think is underrated.
Is there a quarterback towards like the bottom of the draft that you could potentially see being a starter in the NFL?
Oh, Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord's a guy I like too. Tons of talent with him. I think, yeah, if there's a guy I'm picking late in the rounds of a quarterback, I'm taking Kyle McCord.
Oh, you got to like his production at Syracuse. But is there anything specifically about him? And is there a team that you want to throw out there that you potentially could see drafting a quarterback later on that maybe a lot of people wouldn't have seen coming?
Probably his arm. His arm is really what tons of NFL throws throughout his film. A lot of these, tight windows or just good arm strength. I definitely like his arm talent. And for the team, I don't know right now. I would probably say either I would say the Cowboys, honestly, too, just depending on how the Shedeur Sanders works out.
It sounds like you're definitely really high on the Cowboys. Ending up taking a quarterback in this draft at some point. So, and even with Dak Prescott with that no trade clause, I feel like he maybe, if you're him, you don't want to deal with a rookie quarterback of any sort of caliber, whether or not it is Shedeur Sanders or Kyle McCord. Andrew, did you have an underrated prospect for this draft?
Maybe not underrated as of right now, and I guess we'll get to this a little bit later. But I mean, Mike Green has like shot up everybody's draft boards. And I wanted to ask you a question about that specifically, maybe just transition into it, because I feel like he came out of nowhere playing at Marshall. And obviously he had an incredible season, played against some major Power 5 opponents and had really, really good games. But Pro Football Focus has him rated as the number 10 prospect in this whole draft. Where did Mike Green come from? And like, who is this guy out of Marshall? Number 2 edge rusher, according to PFF right now.
This guy is a freak athlete, good bend, speed. This dude is a beast. And when you're looking, we were talking about the Senior Bowl earlier, this guy dominated the Senior Bowl. Didn't even have to practice in day 3. Days 1 and days 2 showed out. Even had, I forgot who it was, it against the LSU tackle or Connerly? Yeah, I think it was one of them that they got bull rushed by Green. That went viral. He's shooting up draft boards because of his athleticism. He tested well. So, yeah, Mike Green is a freak.
And then for like a team specifically, right? There's a lot of teams that could use a really good edge rusher. I feel like when I'm going through mock drafts and stuff like that, edge rusher is just on the top of everybody's list of needs. Could you see like a team like Cincinnati possibly like going up and getting him, or possibly staying back and getting a guy like that? Obviously their defense needs so much improvement, but like is Cincinnati possibly a landing spot, or maybe possibly even higher? I know they're drafting like 16 or 15, but could you see him even going higher than that?
Oh yeah, the Falcons, I believe they have 14. I think I've been mocking him to the Falcons for a while. Last year, we expected them to take the edge rusher out of Alabama. I'm like forgetting off the top of my head, but we expected him to take. They ended up taking Michael Penix. So now I think this is the year that they take the edge rusher. And I think Mike Green is a perfect landing spot there.
When we look at this draft, there's usually always a guaranteed Pro Bowler, but they're not taken at the very top of the draft. So maybe I'm thinking like a guy like Derwin James or Quentin Nelson, who isn't exactly a top 3 pick, but maybe they're top 10, maybe they're top 15. And everybody kind of knows that they're going to be good at the NFL level. And maybe they get passed up just because of positional values in the NFL draft. Is there a guy that you look at in this draft that fits that mold?
And we're talking about later in the rounds, or just anyone that
it could be anyone. You know, everybody's talking about the top 3 guys: Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and Cam Ward. It could be in the first round, or it could be a little bit later.
If we're talking about, I want to throw out an offensive lineman there. Gray Zabel. That is a guy I'm high on. Dude is a beast. Best interior offensive lineman in this draft. I definitely think he's a lock to be a Pro Bowler. He's going to have a great career. This guy can do anything. Tackle, guard, center. You pick him, he's going to play for you wherever you want.
He was at North Dakota State, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we saw him at the Senior Bowl, and that was initially, I'm sure he had some great tape before that, but that's where he really ended up playing well and putting some of the scouts on notice. Who's your late round guy, if you had one, in your mind?
Late round guy, Kyle Williams. Not really late round, but he's kind of like day 2 guy. But Kyle Williams is a beast. One of the better route runners. Great release package. Dude is a burner too. You can take a short screen for 6. Really like Kyle Williams. Okay.
Sticking on the topic of wide receivers, I feel like there's a lot of buzz between either Carolina's pick or maybe even Cowboys at 12. Who do you think is going to be the first wide receiver off the board, and where do you like rank them between Egbuka and Tedero McMillan and all those great players that even Matthew Golden possibly being like mocked to the Cowboys at 12 or one of those 3 receivers? It feels like they're going to go pretty early.
Oh yeah, no, tons of talent at wide receiver. The first one I do think is going to be off the board is Tet. I think just his size, the physicality, but I don't have Tet as high as a lot of people do, but I'm fine with him going number 1, being the first overall wide receiver taken. But in terms of my rankings, I have Luther Burden behind Travis Hunter, number 1. But if we're not talking about Travis Hunter, Luther Burden would be my number 1. And then it would be Mecca Egbuka. And then you have Matthew Golden and Tet. That's where I rank those 4 guys.
Interesting. So you have the guy that you think is going to go off the board first as your 4th best receiver.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's a little tricky there, but I do think he's a good fit for the Panthers. But yeah.
And just one more thing about that, like wide receiver rankings. I personally like Luther Burden a lot. I thought he showed a lot in the season before this one, and maybe like Brady Cook and him weren't like always on the same page. You just couldn't like fully get it together this season. But what do you like so much about Luther Burden? Obviously, he's one of the most physical receivers in this draft and just like an all-around beast. So what like his stock maybe dropped a little bit this year after a disappointing season. It felt like he was like one of either the wide receiver 1 or 2 coming out of last season. But like, what do you like so much about Luther Burden?
Yeah, I do not think this guy should fall to the second round. I don't even think he should make it out of the top 15. This is a top talent. Some people like to compare him to Malik Neighbors. I definitely see it. He's a Walmart Malik Neighbors, if you will, not as explosive, but definitely a guy that, is around that similar caliber. Great after the catch, great hands, even though they didn't measure up the greatest, he still has great hands. And in terms of his route running, a lot of people say he can't do it. I believe he can. A solid route tree. I think just Missouri didn't use him effectively. They tried to just put him in different spots. But yeah, I do think he's a good route runner, and he's an explosive player, man.
So Steve Smith said that he didn't think that Tet McMillan was a number one wide receiver in the NFL. Obviously, if you're getting drafted in the first round, the expectation is at the very least you're number two. Out of all of the guys that we've just talked about, how many do you classify as number one wide receiver in the NFL?
That's a good question right there. So out of the guys we talked about, I think Luther Burden is a guy that could be a one. Ted McMillan can be a one. I'll disagree with Steve Smith there. And Matthew Golden. Yeah, Emeka Egbuka is a two. Is a Z or a Y. But yeah, the rest I think can be ones in the NFL.
Travis Hunter included?
Oh, yeah, Travis Hunter. Yeah, if we're talking about Travis Hunter, yes, Travis Hunter's a one.
Yeah, I guess every time you're kind of talking about the receivers or the corners, you kind of have to throw him in there too. Yeah. If he's playing both ways, you definitely think that he could be the number one on offense, or would he be more so better fit in some other packages, like maybe not just red zone, but maybe as like a two or like somewhere in the slot?
Yeah, so if we're talking he's playing both ways, I don't think you want him to be the one guy because, I mean, the physicality in the NFL is way different than college. And I doubt they're going to put him out there a lot, even though he wants to. But, yeah, if we're talking about him playing both ways, I think a two would be the best spot for him. A guy that won't have all the focus on him, but he can get in there and make big plays.
Okay, well, reverting back to this Travis Hunter versus Abdul Carter talk, I know we talked about it a little bit earlier. I know you said that you had Travis Hunter maybe going to New York, and personally, I just want to give my 2 cents on that. I think that it just fits him more than him wearing a Giants jersey and being in New York rather than being in Cleveland. That just whatever the Browns organization is right now just feels like it fits a little bit more. But does that mean you have Abdul Carter going too, or where does he fit into this mix?
Oh yeah, I have Carter going number 2. I think him and Myles Garrett is a match made in heaven for the Browns. Yeah, you may not have an offense that can potentially score right now, but if you have a defense like that with him on one side and Myles Garrett on the other, that's a duo that no one is going to want to see.
Yeah, so just following up on that. So I could have asked this question a couple minutes ago when we were talking about Shedeur Sanders, but in some like Pro Football Focus mocks and just like some NFL mocks that you've like seen thrown out there, Shedeur Sanders still isn't out of the running for the number 2 overall draft pick. There's just no chance in your opinion that the Browns go that way?
I think there is a chance, but I also think their new offensive coordinator, the former Alabama quarterbacks coach, I think he wants Jalen Milroe. He's also been on record saying that he thinks Milroe should be taken in the top 5. So I definitely think they wait until the second round to get him, a guy that is familiar with the new offensive coordinator, and that's a perfect match for them. That's what I feel.
So, I mean, obviously you're kind of not ruling it out completely, but if Shedeur Sanders isn't going to the Browns, and you mentioned that the Browns may go defense, do you think that's the best move for them long-term? Like, what would you actually do if you were the Browns organization? Would you invest in a quarterback, invest in the offense, or would you continue to go on investing in that defense, which was already one of the top-rated defenses last year?
Yeah, I would still invest in that defense because a guy like Abdul Carter is a blue-chip prospect, a guy you want to pass up on. And yeah, again, you may need a quarterback, but you bring in Joe Flacco, again, a perfect bridge quarterback for next year. Tons of talent in that draft in terms of quarterback. So I think, again, you match him up with Myles Garrett for the next couple of years with his contract extension. I think it's perfect fit, perfect situation to set yourself up for the future.
And you mentioned Jalen Milroe. I'll ask this really quick. You mentioned that obviously the Browns may potentially take him later on in the draft, especially if they pass a QB at number 2. Where do you see him actually going in this draft?
I think the Browns or the Steelers. Again, I think the Steelers are trying to figure out, it's either going to be Shedeur or Jalen Milroe. And I think the Steelers would be a good fit for Jalen Milroe, if not the Browns.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that we've talked a lot of the general storylines, the main things that are like kind of just like popping off this draft. But I'm a little bit selfish. I want to know about my team specifically, and maybe some other teams that I like. We have a little bit of investment here on the pod, so maybe start off with the Dolphins. I want to know where they're going, and then I have a couple other names for you can go in this order. You can choose whatever order fits best for you. But Bucks, Dolphins, Saints, Jaguars. I feel like those are all pretty interesting picks. They could go any of these teams could go on either side of the ball, and there's a lot of really good prospects. All these teams are drafting within like the top 15 picks at the latest. So I wanted to get your take on what you like. Where do you think either the Dolphins, Bucks, Saints, and Jaguars are going to go with their picks?
Yeah, I was pulling up the draft order right now just to remember where they're at. But I'm going to start off with the Dolphins. I do like Jahdae Barron to the Dolphins in need of a DB. I think Jahdae Barron's a perfect fit. I've been mocking him there for a while too. Perfect fit. Guy that could play anywhere, boundary, safety, nickel. That's a perfect fit for the Dolphins, a guy that they need on defense. And Jahdae Barron's a great player.
All right, let's what about the Bucks?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Let me check the 19, right?
Yeah.
That's a tough one right there. I think they go edge rusher here. Just in case, if Mike Green does fall there, or if someone else they want to take. But I think Mike Green, if he falls from the Falcons, I think Mike Green would be a good fit. And then let me check out the Jags. Where are the Jags at? 9? No, they're at 5. Oh, yeah. Wow. I don't even know why I thought. But yeah, the Jags, I think Will Campbell, if the Patriots don't, decide to go him, I think Will Campbell would be a good fit.
All right, what about
one more team I'm forgetting? Okay, there's one more.
Yeah.
One more team I forgot, the Saints. But in terms of the Saints, that's a tough one right there for me too. But I do think if Tet doesn't get picked at 8, he'll be picked right after. Because again, I'm not a Shedeur guy to the Saints, but I think the Tet pair him up with Chris Olave, get pressure off of Chris Olave. He's dealt with some really nasty head injuries. You want to get him out of there, make Tet the wide receiver 1, potentially. But then Chris Olave can get back healthy and won't have to be focused on too much.
So a lot of people have the Saints potentially trading up in this draft. What is a team that you think, or who is the team that you think could potentially trade up in the first round of this draft to kind of surprise everybody?
Oh, trading up. That's a good one. I think the Steelers, are the best ones. A guy that needed a quarterback. They don't want anyone to take him. But you also have to be willing to, a team has to be willing to trade back. Maybe the 20 teams in front of them, they all high on a guy. They don't want to lose that pick. So I think it's definitely hard to say which team. But if any team, it's a quarterback needy team, and the Steelers are one of them.
Yeah, no, I wanted to go back to Jahdae Barron really quickly just because, it's my Dolphins. I want to know what we're doing with our pick. So do you think Will Johnson is in the mix for one of those number 1 corner spots? I don't know if you have him going any higher than the Dolphins pick, but obviously he's like one of the, if not the number 2 behind Travis Hunter, like one of the best cornerbacks in this whole draft.
No, yeah, Will Johnson, I've also seen him falling, and this guy he's ready. He's NFL ready. Yes, the injuries, they're a little scary, but I don't think they're that scary. Will Johnson is a guy that can come into your NFL team, make an impact. I definitely think he goes higher than 13 because a lot of people are mocking him lower. But, yeah, I think he can go to the Cowboys too. The Cowboys are in a mix for a lot of picks, desperate needs at wide receiver. With Trayvon Diggs getting injured, again, you may need an outside corner like Will Johnson, a guy that can come in and start pairing with Deron Bland. So, yeah, I think he goes higher than 13.
Let's move to the running back situation right now. It's Ashton Genty. Does he actually have a chance to go in the top 10, or is he more of a first round guy? Okay, you're nodding your head yes.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, he's a lock in the top 10. The Raiders, I think, a lot of people are mocking him. I think the best fit is with Ben Johnson and the Bears. That's a perfect match in heaven. Caleb Williams and Ashton Genty. That's a great match. But yeah, he's a lock in the top 10 either. If not the Raiders, then the Bears.
Do you have any sort of reservations with picking a running back that high? I know it kind of seems like a little bit of an archaic type of a viewpoint, but everybody's got a kind of a different way of looking at the running back position when you draft them that high. Is there any reservations if a team picks a running back in the top 10?
I don't think so. I think taking a top talent is just something you want to do in the NFL draft, and Ashton Genty is a top talent. The positional value may not be there, but this is a guy that can come into your team, and he can be potentially an all-pro player. We had guys in the past, Saquon Barkley. This guy had 2,000 yards and the most yards in NFL history in a season. So, yeah, I think taking a running back in the first round, if he's as good as a prospect as a guys like Saquon Barkley or an Ashton Genty, I think you're taking him.
Who's the number 2 running back on the board for you?
Number 2 is Amarian Hampton. Amarian Hampton's number 2. It's very close between him and Henderson. I've flip-flopped him the past couple of weeks. But right now I have Hampton as my number 2.
Travion Henderson would be your other guy.
Yes, Travion Henderson's my 3rd.
Where does Cam Skadaboo fit into that for you?
Cam Skadaboo was actually my 5th ranked running back.
Behind.
I'm forgetting off the top of my head. Who's he behind?
Caleb Johnson.
Yes, behind Caleb Johnson. I was Caleb Johnson. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the 3 latter end of that, like they can all kind of be mixed and matched because of the fact that Ashton Genty and Amar and Hampton just feel like they're like head and shoulders above the rest of them. They're probably the only day one guys. There are going to be 2 running backs off the board in the first round, but I mean, yeah, Caleb, I personally would have Cam Skadaboo at 3, but
yeah, why? I just want to know why.
I mean, just his big playability. Like, obviously, like not all of that translates into the NFL, but he's just so versatile. I mean, you see him thrown in a college football playoff. So I mean, and just like I felt like when the pressure got like more and more immense on him, and like obviously Sam Levitt is a good quarterback, but they were leaning on that run game. He like against a good defense like Texas, he was able to run like straight through them. And a lot of people didn't think that it was going to be the case, but he did. And he didn't play the greatest competition all year long, but I have him as like one of the better prospects in this draft. I mean, not like overall, but just a good running back prospect.
Yeah, that Texas film was, I mean, it was something else. Watching that Texas film was different. I mean, his feet are going to translate. That his feet are phenomenal.
Maybe another question that's like not like there's not a lot of positional value in this, but there's 2 tight ends like within like the maybe top 20 overall based off like PFF and like NFL rankings. Where do you see like either one of like Tyler Warren or like where do you see them going possibly? I know the Colts has been like a hot like topic for either of them. So where do you see them going? And can we have 2 tight ends also going in the first round of this draft?
I do think we see both of them go in the first round. These guys are great. I do have Colston Loveland above Tyler Warren. I do think Loveland is a great route runner, great hands, but Tyler Warren, sometimes struggles to separate. You don't know if he's going to be able to do that at the next level, but he's a great athlete, great in space. If you can get him in space, it's very hard to take him down. But yeah, I think the Colts are the best place for one of those 2, but I think Tyler Warren will be the first one picked.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, you said you like Colston Loveland over Tyler Warren.
Yeah.
I feel like that film with JJ McCarthy was like different. Obviously, they weren't sure at quarterback this season, but I mean, Colston Loveland was great for that offense when when Michigan was in their national championship winning days. So I mean, I personally, and he like showed the ability to separate. I feel like a little bit more than Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren can make a bunch of contested catches, but Colston Loveland, I mean, anywhere in the rankings, they sit from like 14 to 17. They're both really close. So I mean, I like both those guys too. Yeah,
they're both great, but. I think Tyler Warren's probably going to go first, but Loveland, I think, is going to be the better player in the NFL.
There's also always like some draft surprises. Do you see anybody that maybe is not like being mocked as highly right now, kind of like falling into like the first round, middle to late first round, or does it feel like more solidified this year?
I think it is more solidified, but I think we may see some fallers like Luther Burden. I hope he doesn't, but I mean, seeing him fall to the second round just feels like it might happen just based off what we've seen.
All right, so you mentioned the fallers. Is there somebody's going to have to enter the first round there? Is there somebody that you see who could potentially surprise a lot of people by being called on the first day?
Jalen Milroe. I think.
Whoa.
Yeah, I've had this take since January. I do think Jalen Milroe has a very big chance of going in the first round. I don't think right now it seems like it will happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns do trade up. Don't want to, lose out. Yeah, I do think the Browns have a chance to trade up there, even though they're right at the top of round 2.
Well, they would trade into the first round, maybe with another team that's looking to trade out of the first round.
Yeah.
Get him that way. All right, well, we mentioned Jalen Milroe. Let's talk about the other 2 quarterbacks, Jackson Dart and Tyler Show. What do you think?
I know a lot of people like Tyler Shuck, but I'm not a guy that is too high on him. A lot of injuries. Is a little older. I think the arm talent is great, but he has some Will Levis type plays in that film, and you just leave you questioning a guy that's his age, and you're thinking, what are you doing? You're supposed to be NFL ready, and I don't see it with Tyler Shuck. But in terms of Jackson Dart, I do see a guy that's talented. Now the offense with Lane Kiffin, we know how it goes, but Jackson Dart is talented. Now there is times facing pressure. What are you doing down in the clutch moments? Throwing those interceptions, it doesn't look good. So Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck, I'm not too high on, but I think Jackson Dart has the talent to potentially be a solid quarterback in the NFL.
Flipping to completely different side of the ball on defense. Safeties, like it feels like they're never ones to like get all that much hype, but Malachi Starks has been rated as one of the top 10 players in this draft. Do you have a specific landing spot for him, or just how do you feel about Malachi Starks? I know that like obviously you're not really taking safeties in the top 10, but he's rated, like Pro Football Focus has him rated as the 8th best player in this draft. Do you see him going in the first round, or could he be like one of the guys that like could possibly fall out of it?
Oh, I do see him going in the first round. He's a talented player. I do like a lot of other safeties, but Malachi Starks is a great player. He's a blue chip prospect, I think, as well. Even though a lot of people might not think that right now, but I do think he's a great player that will go in the first round.
Someone we didn't talk about as much too, Mason Graham is like one of the best players in this draft, defensive lineman out of Michigan. How do you feel about him? Do you think he's maybe like a top 5, top 6 draft pick? I know like some people have him going to the Patriots or even a little bit lower than that, but I mean, he should go in the top 10 pretty solidifiedly, but we haven't talked about him at all. So I wanted to just give Mason Graham a little bit of love.
Oh yeah. Mason Graham is a beast as well. I feel like he's become underrated, even though he's such a top tier prospect, but not a lot of people are talking about him. This guy's going to go in the top 6. I think he's a beast, and I don't see him falling anywhere below the top 6.
And okay. So Will Campbell, right? I know that a lot of people have mocked him to the Patriots because they need no linemen. Is there any chance that he falls out of the top 10? I feel like the season that he had was just, it got like maybe overlooked a little bit. Like he was like very clearly the first, like the number 1 offensive lineman going into the season, that he didn't do anything to like stop that. Like, or he didn't tank his draft stock at all. But I feel like if the Patriots or like one of the teams at the top maybe like fall out of love with him, he could maybe slip a little bit even farther than that.
No, yeah, I think he goes at 4. I did have the Jaguars taking him too, like you asked earlier, but if they're, who are they going to pick? But in the Patriots, I don't think they can pass up. You have a guy like Drake May, you need to protect him. Will Campbell's a perfect person to pick for that. And I feel like the draft smoke has kind of gotten there because of his arm length. Can he play on the outside with his arm length? I do think he can. I don't think it matters too much. It obviously matters. But for Will Campbell, he's a great player, and the arm length doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good edge guys. Like probably one of my last ones, like just from a pure interest standpoint, you have like Donovan Ezra-Okawa. Ezra-Raku,
yeah.
I was thinking about something completely different, combine those last names, but Ezra-Raku. And then you have guys like James Pierce Jr. You have a lot of really good edge rushers out of this draft. Like, do you have like a specific like guy or two that you really like out of the edge? And obviously Mike Green that we talked about earlier. There's a lot of edge guys that could maybe go in the first round. Who do you like the most out of those? Maybe besides Mike Green that we already talked about.
Shamar Stewart, out of A&M. Great run defender. The production, I know it scares a lot of people, but this dude is a freak athlete. He will, make up that production in the NFL. He just needs to work on his pass rushing a little bit, but his run defense is phenomenal. That's a guy you're going to take in there. You could be an anchor on your edge. Shamar Stewart's definitely a guy that I really love.
Actually, one last one. Jalen Walker, a name that maybe rings a couple of bells for a lot of different people, especially Georgia fans. I don't know if this is like an ideal spot for him, but obviously like Philly loves like Georgia guys. Do you see possibly Jalen Walker slipping all the way to Philadelphia at 32? And I mean, he's one of the best, he's one of the best guys coming out of this draft. So how do you feel about Jalen Walker? Is there a chance that he slips all the way to Philadelphia at the end of the first round?
I think there's definitely a chance. And knowing Howie Roseman, he loves his Georgia players. He did it last year, or not last year, but a couple of years ago, it happened with Nolan Smith. A lot of people had a fantastic combine. Should he be taken in the first round, or should be taken in the top 15? But he ended up falling all the way to the Eagles, and people were like, "How did this happen?" And then you come back to this past season, had a great year, was a very important player to their Super Bowl run. So yeah, I do think Jalen Walker, if he's there, which I think it's a good chance he might be there, I think the Eagles are taking him.
Well, it looks like we talked just about everything that we possibly could for this draft. Do you have any final comments, any final takes, anything that you want to get off your chest that maybe we did not cover, anything at all?
Anything? I wouldn't have anything off the top of my head. Maybe Jaden Blue, probably one of the guys I think that will be a fantastic running back in the NFL. A Devon Achane type of guy, a guy who can come in, receive the ball out of the backfield. Could be an explosive playmaker. Yeah, Jaden Blue is a guy I really love.
Vaughn A-Chain, you say? Hey, good guy.
That sounds pretty good. Well, I mean, I'm glad that we were able to get this going, talking about the NFL draft. Obviously, you guys are just we're going off there, and that was really cool to see. But thank you so much for coming on to the Big Little Podcast. As always, I'm your
Thank you
host,
for having me,
Patrick
man.
Yeah. As always, I'm your host, Patrick Previty. That is Andrew Greig. We'll see you guys next time.